They call NASA the window to the stars, but a lot of what's behind that window stayed locked. For decades, astronauts came back with stories they couldn't tell. Medical files were sealed, footage went missing, reports that should have been public ended up in classified folders. The agency built its reputation on openness, but the records say otherwise. Memos disappeared, tapes were erased, and anyone who asked too many questions got reassigned. I'm going to share 16 facts from documents and testimony that NASA tried to bury. Subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this, posted every week. Number 1. In 1969, NASA recorded the Apollo 11 moon landing on high-quality telemetry tapes. Those tapes were the best footage humanity had of the first steps on another world. In 2006, the agency admitted they were gone. Not lost in a fire, not misplaced. Erased and recorded over during the 1980s to save money on new tapes. The official explanation was a storage shortage. Internal memos told a different story. Some engineers had flagged the tapes for preservation. The request was ignored. What the public got instead was a broadcast copy, lower quality, edited for television. The original record of the most important moment in space history disappeared because someone decided it was cheaper that way. Number 2. During the Gemini and Apollo programs, astronauts started reporting health problems that never made it into the press releases. Heart arrhythmias showed up in flight logs. Vision changes appeared after missions. Internal medical reports documented symptoms that doctors couldn't fully explain. NASA kept those files restricted for decades. The agency needed healthy heroes for the cameras, not men with long-term complications. Some astronauts later admitted they were told to downplay symptoms during debriefs. The records existed, but they stayed in classified folders while the public saw only smiling faces and mission patches. Number 3. Radiation exposure in space was always a known risk. What NASA didn't share was how much they underestimated it. Declassified documents from the 1970s show that dose calculations were revised multiple times, always after astronauts had already flown. Some crew members received exposures higher than the agency publicly admitted. Medical follow-ups were inconsistent. When health problems appeared years later, the connection to mission radiation was hard to prove because the baseline data had gaps. The agency tracked what it wanted to track and left the rest off the official record. Number 4. During early missions, astronauts reported seeing things they couldn't explain. Lights moving in patterns, objects that seemed to track the spacecraft. The logs recorded these observations, and the debriefs noted them, but when reporters asked questions, the official line was always the same. Ice particles, reflections, equipment glitches. Gordon Cooper, one of the original Mercury astronauts, later said he had seen unexplained craft during his career, and that the agency had a policy of dismissing such reports. The internal files existed. The public version was always simpler. Number 5. Before the Challenger explosion in 1986, engineers at Morton Thiokol warned NASA about the O-ring seals. The temperature on launch day was too cold. The data showed risk. Internal memos documented the concern. NASA launched anyway. 7 people died. The Rogers Commission later confirmed that the warnings had been ignored. The same pattern appeared in 2003 with Columbia. Engineers flagged foam debris damage during the mission. Management decided it wasn't serious. 7 more lives lost. Both disasters had paper trails showing that someone inside knew the risk and someone above decided to proceed. Those memos surfaced only after the funerals. Number 6. Long-duration spaceflight changes the human body in ways NASA studied but didn't always disclose. Bone density loss, muscle atrophy, and immune system changes were documented early. What came later was more troubling. Astronauts returning from extended missions reported vision problems that persisted for years. Brain scans showed changes in fluid distribution. Some of this data stayed internal because the agency was promoting Mars missions and long-term space stations. Disclosing the full health toll might have raised uncomfortable questions about sending humans deeper into space without better protection. The studies happened. The public summaries were selective. Number 7. Multiple astronauts have described seeing unidentified objects during missions. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14, spoke publicly about his belief that extraterrestrial contact had occurred and been covered up. Buzz Aldrin referenced a light that followed Apollo 11. NASA's official position was always mundane explanations, but declassified files show that the agency kept internal logs of anomalous sightings separate from public mission reports. The policy was clear: acknowledge nothing that couldn't be explained easily. Let the record show ice and debris, not questions without answers. Number 8. During the Cold War, astronauts were sometimes subjects in experiments they weren't fully briefed on. Radiation exposure tests, psychological stress evaluations, drug trials for motion sickness and sleep regulation. Consent forms existed, but the details given to crew members were incomplete. Some of these programs only came to light decades later through FOIA requests. The agency needed data, and the astronauts trusted the mission. That trust was documented in medical files that stayed classified long after the men who signed them had retired or passed away. Number 9. When Russian cosmonauts returned from missions, their accounts sometimes contradicted NASA's version of shared events. Joint missions produced two sets of records. The American files emphasized cooperation and success. The Soviet and later Russian archives contain details about equipment failures, close calls, and unexplained observations that the American side never acknowledged. When researchers compared notes years later, the gaps were obvious. NASA's public narrative was cleaner. The question was always, what got edited out and why? Number 10. Live broadcasts from space missions had a pattern. At certain moments, the feed would cut to a blue screen or switch to mission control. Technical difficulties, the agency said, but the timing was suspicious. Multiple viewers and amateur radio operators recorded audio that continued after the video stopped. Some of those recordings captured astronauts describing objects outside the spacecraft. The footage never came back until the conversation moved on. The agency controlled the cameras, and someone decided when the world got to watch. Number 11. Not every NASA mission was about science. During the shuttle era, classified payloads went up with military involvement and restricted documentation. Some launches had no public manifest. The crews were briefed on a need-to-know basis, and the mission details stayed sealed. Budget documents showed money flowing to projects with no names. The agency served more than one master, and the line between exploration and defense was never as clear as the press releases suggested. Number 12. Employees who asked too many questions learned quickly. Engineers who raised safety concerns before Challenger found their careers stalled. Scientists who pushed for disclosure of anomalous data were reassigned. The agency had a culture of managing information, and people who didn't fit that culture moved on. Some spoke publicly after retirement. Their stories matched. There was an unofficial policy about what could be discussed and what stayed internal. The memos existed, but the warnings came too late. Number 13. Images from Mars missions sparked debates that NASA worked hard to shut down. Photographs showed formations that looked artificial. The agency explained them as rocks and shadows, but the raw data files sometimes differed from the processed images released to the public. Independent analysts found inconsistencies in color correction and resolution. Whether the anomalies meant anything was one question. Why the files didn't match was another. The agency controlled the cameras and the editing software. Number 14. As private companies entered the space industry, NASA's relationship with secrecy evolved. Contracts with SpaceX, Boeing, and others included non-disclosure agreements that covered more than trade secrets. Employees were restricted from discussing certain mission details even after leaving. The line between corporate confidentiality and government classification blurred. When astronauts flew on private vehicles, they still followed NASA protocols about what could be shared. The agency's reach extended beyond its own walls. Number 15. Every year, billions of dollars went into programs that didn't appear in public budget summaries. Black budget allocations funded projects with code names and no oversight hearings. Some of that money went to space-related research. The accounting was designed to prevent questions. When investigators tried to trace the funds, they hit walls. The agency operated alongside intelligence services, and the money moved through channels that left no public record. What it paid for remained classified. Number 16. Astronauts who flew decades ago still cannot discuss certain aspects of their missions. Secrecy agreements signed in the 1960s and 1970s remain in force. Some have spoken in general terms about being told to stay quiet. Others took what they knew to the grave. The agency promised transparency, but the contracts told a different story. Today, new astronauts sign similar documents. The policy continues. And the question remains the same. What else is waiting in those classified folders that the public may never see?